What is up, guys? Here's your boy Kyle. Hope everyone is in the holiday spirits because I'm certainly not. I don't feel it. But anyway, either way, still hope everyone's having a good holiday. So I'm going to do a review on the shoot interview with the Outsiders Kevin Nash Scott Hall DVD. I bought, I guess, 3 days ago. Excuse me. So this interview shoot here with the Outsiders, Hall and Nash. Kind of talk about a few things here. Actually, they start off with talking about how they first met, and this was during the time, and Nash and Scott Hall shared a very funny story of how they first met. This was back when they were in WCW, when they first met, and Nash had hitched Scott Hall, gave him a ride so they can go to their next destination for a show. And while they were driving, because Kevin Nash drove a Cadillac, and they said because Kevin Nash, he's a big guy, he's 7 feet tall, how even his legs were like up on the steering wheel, and they're kind of like spread it out across, even on the passenger side, because he's just a really big guy, and how Scott Hall would change the dial of the radio, and each time he would change the dial of the stations on the radio, because Kevin Nash is such a big guy and his legs are like, spread out pretty much through the majority of the car, Scott Hall's arm would reach over Nash's leg, and Nash said it was funny because he thought at the time Scott Hall might have been kind of funny, like that, and he's like, oh God, he's like, don't tell me I'm in the car with one of these guys. And he said Scott Hall did this 3 times, reaching over his leg to change the radio station 3 times. And Scott Hall said he remembers that incident, how funny it was, how Nash was just like staring real still. He just focused on the road. He wasn't looking over or anything like that. And Nash was saying to himself, he thought to himself, boy, like, is he going to come over here and try to kiss me? So it's a really fun road story there, how they first met. But then going into that, they talked about how they got into WWE, and from there how they really didn't focus too much on the clique that much, but they did mention other relationships and closeness they had with Shawn Michaels and Sean Waltman and Triple H, and how Kevin Nash, and how when Scott Hall was very hot, how he asked Vince McMahon for a raise, and Vince McMahon said no, maybe another time, maybe in the next few years, but no, I'm not going to give you enough raise. And I think Scott Hall said he was getting paid around like maybe $420,000 at that time, and he said he couldn't understand, but he probably figured in Vince McMahon's mind was that if I give you a raise, then that's taking money from the company. And Scott Hall said to himself, he thinks that's how Vince McMahon thought, when he asked for the raise, but he was saying also to himself that if that was the case, he couldn't see, how, because, at that time WWE was doing good. And then he had heard that Sean Waltman was talking with one of the talent scouts from WCW, and he found out how much Sean Waltman was getting from his contract, and he's like, whoa, you're going to get paid that much? He's like, asked them if they know anything about me, because he said he didn't even know if WCW was ever interested in him or anything like that. So he told Sean Waltman, he's like, hey, ask the guys, if they're interested in me or whatever. And they called Scott Hall, and Scott Hall talked about how he negotiated his contract, and how he said, I want this, X a number of dollars, and if someone comes in after me, or comes in and gets paid that much, then you have to pay me more. So you see how so he talks about how he kind of, I guess you want to say, kind of sweet talked his way into getting a really good deal. And during that time, Kevin Nash said that during that time, Scott Hall was telling him, hey man, I got this good contract deal here, come on, let's jump the ship, go to WCW. And Nash was saying, at that time, he was actually going to stay in WWE. He wasn't going to go to WCW. What made him change his mind was during the match where it was supposed to be him versus Bret Hart in a steel cage match, and then The Undertaker was going to come out, interrupt the match or whatever, and this would start a feud in the program with Kevin Nash and Undertaker to set their match up for WrestleMania. I think WrestleMania or later down that line towards I think they wanted to build up towards WrestleMania, and how he said, Bret Hart, bitched and moaned about saying, what's in it for me, what's in it for me, if you guys do all this, what am I going to get out of it? And he said, Undertaker was a very quiet guy, but Undertaker just finally said, like, would you shut the F up? Like, it's not about you. Like, we're trying to do business here. This is for me and Nash, to get over and to, working the program together for WrestleMania or whatever. And Nash said, you remember, he, at that point, he's like, okay, that's it. He called Scott up. He says, dude, I'm out of here. I'm getting the F out of here. I'm going with you to WCW. And they said the original plan was that when they first came into WCW, that the whole thing of being, like outsiders and make it seem like they're the invading WWE, they never really thought, they never really gave that much thought. It wasn't something that they really came up with that much. They talked about, Eric Bischoff and how kind of businessman he is. Bischoff's the kind of guy where it's like, F you. If you F me, I'll F you back. And then, a couple hours later, he'll say, hey, you want to get a beer? And you're like, sure. You buying? And he's like, okay, yeah, I'll buy you a beer. And it's like, everything else is like, cool, calm, collected. So that was really interesting there. And one other interesting thing was that we talked about the NWO. Kevin Nash said that it was actually his idea, his pitch to turn Hulk Hogan heel, because during that time, Hogan was starting getting booed, for the last 4 months. And the Nash and Hall, and I think it was also Bischoff, and they were all talking about, like, what can they do to be different, what can they do to, change the game. And Nash said he thought, hey, why not turn Hulk Hogan heel? Hogan said he pitched the idea to Bischoff. Bischoff was like, great, I love it. He told Hulk Hogan about it. Hogan wasn't too sure, but at the end of the day, Hogan ended up, going along with it, and that was the birth of, the NWO and everything else. So for stuff like that, so they talked about, they really didn't touch too much on the last years of WCW when WCW was falling, but how we pretty much thought, they just pretty much said, the company was, in a rut, even before Russo even came in there, and the company was, just going downhill. And they also just mentioned, when they came back in 2002, they said that, for Vince to say that, you guys, if you guys remember the invasion angle, and when how the invasion angle kind of really didn't live up to expectations, and not Scott Hall, but Kevin Nash gave his thoughts on that, saying, Vince, saying, oh, you guys come in, you guys come back, we're going to take care of you. He said, but, when they did the whole WCW angle, and then when NWO came back, he said, they were hot for, a while, like the first month or two. He said the company just completely killed it. He says for anybody in the WWE at that time to say, we're going to, come back, treat you guys right, like just, he said it was complete, utter BS, and that it was all politics. He says because they killed every WCW wrestler that came in that company, as well as the NWO. He says because he's like, it's obvious, because we were kicking their butts in the ratings before, and so now since they're on top, I guess they got to feel like, hey, we have to show you, who's boss. He said so. He thinks that was just basically a whole bunch of politics, stuff that they did. One thing they said they never could understand with the higher ups of WCW, like the higher up, was that they had a love-hate relationship with the company. They loved it that it was getting high ratings. It's like the highest rated show on their channel or on their network. But they really didn't care for it too much because they didn't like wrestling. The only person from the higher ups who liked wrestling was Ted Turner, and they just thought that was one of the reasons why they think WCW failed, because the higher ups controlling WCW really didn't want anything to do with wrestling anyway. They were just happy the fact that they were beating everyone from week to week based on ratings. and they said the difference between, to them they saw this, the difference between WWE and WCW was that WCW was a TV network producing a wrestling show. Excuse me, producing a wrestling show, and WWE was a wrestling company producing a entertainment wrestling program. So that's why they always saw the difference between WCW and WWE, and reason why they think as the WWE did not last long, and why WWE is still on top. So all in all, it was a good interview. Excuse me. A lot of funny road stories between these guys, from the days in WCW and WWE. Really good stuff, and I mean, this is really, you really get to see the close, tight-knit friendship that Nash and Scott Hall have. It's really great, to see guys, it's really close like this. And they're not even like relatives, but they're just as close as like brothers could be. So this is a good DVD. If you're an NWO fan, Scott Hall fan, Kevin Nash fan, which I don't see how anyone couldn't be, I recommend you click the sub to get it. It's the shoot interview with the Outsiders, Scott Hall and Kevin Nash. This is Kyle9965. Leave your comments down below. Comment, subscribe. Peace out.